we have a truly compelling presentation by Twitter's Matthew Moroz. In a conversation following, we're going to welcome back George Winslow. But at this time, please welcome Matthew. Oh, I'm sorry, George, to come on up and make the introduction. George?
Well, really happy to be back up here for the last session. We started off, me up here for the first session with Roku, talking about connected TVs, which is one of the hottest topics that I think a lot of people are dealing with. And I think it's very appropriate that we're ending up in the last section with a conversation with Matthew that I think is really deeply relevant for both all of our traditional TV folks that are trying to get their content to stand out from an increasingly very competitive landscape, but also on the digital side, the importance of social media. Laura Martin earlier had this pretty frightening statistics of 36 hours coming up every hour, so really the level of clutter can be pretty overwhelming. So we've got a great person to do this. Matthew brings to bear some great background, not only in social media, but in TV and advertising. And I'm not going to go too deeply into Anthony's bio, but he currently leads Twitter's creative strategy and innovations for the TV partnership team, where he works with really the whole range of the broadcast community, producers and talent, to integrate Twitter's offerings into their efforts. And very importantly, they're actively working to help TV players get better understand how they can get the most out of Twitter products like Periscope and Vine. We'll be talking quite a bit about just the growing importance of video on social media. Prior to that, he really had a very interesting career in TV. He was Senior Director of Brand Management at Fox Broadcasting, and earlier led media and entertainment client partnerships at Razorfish, where he worked with a lot of innovative digital campaigns with Hulu, Fox, Turner, etc. So I'm going to invite Matthew up, and he's going to talk for a while, and then I'll be back up and we'll have a conversation.
All right, so it's me standing between all of you and the booze at the bar. So I will try to make this as entertaining as possible. I think that we're going to take some time to go through a couple of things. The first thing I want to do is, in my own very Twitter way, summarize some of the thoughts that we have around the state of the TV industry in a hopefully a compelling way. And then talk about Twitter from three different perspectives. The first one is distribution. And for a lot of people in this room, I think that between the words that we use, I think distribution could be the most highly contestable word in terms of how it can be applied to each and every one of our businesses. So, for us, content distribution is really content distribution on the Twitter platform. The second is creative, is how do we look at the tool sets that we have available as the Twitter platform as a whole, talking about Vine, talking about Periscope, talking about the ways that you can use video on the platform to do creative marketing, creative content for a television show and add dimension to that storytelling. And then at the end, oh, that's perfect, I'm gonna need that. At the end, I want to just give some high-level examples of how monetization plays a role in that. Not to speak as an authority on the matter, but just to give some examples and illustrations of how these things are starting to get some traction. And if you want to connect with me afterwards, I can point you in the right direction to some people who can speak authoritatively about those things. So just to kick this off, Twitter was really never designed to be the second screen app for TV audiences. I think that millions of people have chosen it in some form or another over the past few years as the place to make that happen. I think that we've lived through an era of the promise of second screen apps, but what Twitter's been able to do best is to be able to function in some ways very similar to the TV industry. It's real time. We added this element of conversation to it. It's highly distributed and it's very global. So the pieces that are loosely joined together that make that second screen experience happen is that the audience is there and they start having a conversation about the show. They can demonstrate their affinity, they can find their communities, and they can start to have some conversations increasingly with the people who are involved in making those television shows. So I want to take a few minutes and I'm going to dive into that, but first I want to talk about how we can characterize and maybe summarize some of the thoughts that we've gone through today around the challenges that the TV industry faced. And so I want to start with a brief history lesson, and I want to call this, just give this the basic title, This Used to Be Easier. So in the beginning, TV was like an old-fashioned track meet. There were a limited number of lanes or networks. You started when the gun went off, and whoever won the time slot, they won. It was easy. It got better. Cable, satellite, almost an infinite number of lanes, and you didn't need to win any specific time or date. As long as you tackled the demo that you set out to tackle, it was all yours. And it didn't even matter if when they watched the show, as long as it was watched on a TV. Those are good days. So if you're in the traditional television business, you might feel a little bit like the guy here. I think it's been said 15 times today that the audience is fragmenting. They watch when they want to watch, where they want to watch, on multiple devices, and in as many different ways as we can conceive of. So it's not track and field. It's not cross country. What is it really? Well, I think it's parkour. It's this idea that the audience starts wherever they want, that there's not even a lane to run in, there's not even a track to run on. It's just anything that they want to get their hands on and jump on and flip off of. This is what the future of TV, I think, really looks like in this day and age. I think that everybody's had a chance to talk about the fact today that we're living in this golden age of television. There's endless amounts of options, but really there's one story to tell today, and it's that people want TV, and they want to engage with TV, and they want to have a conversation about TV, and whatever that means, whatever form that takes, it takes it in the form of the device in my hand. So with all of that in mind, it doesn't matter where these conversations start, and no matter how we go to market with a television show, Twitter supercharges that content. And it supercharges it in a way that I think is very unique to Twitter because it adds a layer of conversation around TV content. And right now, I feel like we're the best at connecting those audiences with that content. So 3 things that Twitter users and TV have really going for them is that they're defining what the new kind of viewer really is. I think that no matter where the audiences are and how they're consuming it, they're having their conversations about it on Twitter. I'm not necessarily saying that everybody's doing that, but Twitter users are tastemakers. They're people that talk about TV, and they consider themselves TV experts, and they're more than happy to share that with their friends and family. So when we talk about Twitter as a distribution platform for that conversation, I want to put this into a little bit of context here. Oh, okay. So when we talk about active Twitter users, logged in, we're looking at roughly 300 million people. The logged out experience, the one where tweets show up in search results where you find them in search results on your phone. And when you end up landing on Twitter without even logged in, is roughly 500 million people. Now, this content then sort of amplifies out into the world through syndication. And when we look at syndication, those are places where tweets end up in other news media. It's when tweets end up on TV and how they get built back into the story that's told by the content creators themselves. And that's 1 billion people. And so we've dedicated ourselves over the course of the past year to really start to take advantage of content syndication and looking at what that means not only from the perspective of how it emanates out from the world of Twitter into the wider media as a whole, but then how that we can take that and find a way to make that relevant to what we consider more traditional means of television consumption. And I figured I needed to find a way to wrap this around back onto some of the OTT devices. Did I pass my slide here? Okay. So, like I said, I want to talk about content distribution, content creation, and just a little bit about monetization. So the way that this syndication really starts to take hold is everybody remembers the dress. So I'm sort of out of tune with some of my slides here. One moment. So everybody remembers the dress, and this was a spark. So one of the things that happened was the young woman posted the photo on Tumblr. She had 27 followers. Is the dress gold and white, or is it blue and black? BuzzFeed picked it up and posted it at 5:47 in the morning, and by 8:54 in the morning, it was on the Today Show. So, in the case, let me see here. Excuse me, I've got a little bit of a missing sync here. But at the end of the day, BuzzFeed almost saw 1 million page views, and Twitter was responsible for 72% of those. So in the end, that tweet was seen over 1 billion times on social media, in the press, and on TV. And so what that means is that when we're having conversations, not only on Twitter as a whole or about a meme or a social phenomenon, these are the same ways with which television conversation spreads as well, and that's what I mean by media at the speed of now. So I want to take a minute and talk about how this all folds back, how the syndication folds back into OTT and set-top devices. We're looking at ways with which we can also create a tweeting experience that can be embedded into these devices. You can take a look at the trending on Twitter for Comcast. Here we've got trending on Twitter in the EPG. And these are ways with which we can take conversation that's happening on Twitter and create relevancy and drive, tune in and drive viewership around more traditional devices. So here we have an example of Xbox One sort of stepping it up and showing related tweets in the experience. I've got a little video here. So this was nice because what it does is that while watching along, you're flowing in some of the top tweets. These are conversation that happens that was time-stamped and is then redistributed back out around the presentation of the episode. So in some of the other ways that we're starting to address that, the ability to take that conversation and move it around in time a little bit, about a month ago we launched a new product called Moments, which was a way for us to address the casual user's ability to find great content on Twitter and stay up to date with everything. One of these things that Twitter the Twitter Moments represents is the ability for us to be able to lend an editorial hand and aggregate some of these moments into an experience that you can consume outside of just the reverse chronological presentation. And we're now starting to roll out this Moment Maker tool to our TV partners, which gives our TV partners the ability to put a wrapper around that content experience, whether that's a live event, whether that's an award show, or whether that's the rollout of a new series or a new hot episode of Scandal on a Thursday night. So what does it mean for TV? So many times, a lot of the biggest things that are happening on Twitter are also happening on TV. It gives you the whole story at a glance, and it gives you the ability to get caught up and stay caught up. So I'm going to move into another section around creating everywhere, and I'm going to run over a couple of the key aspects of where we've placed our big bets this year at Twitter around media and specifically around video. So Twitter video works for all content. I think that there's a lot of different ways that you can take and package up content. There we go. So the ways that you can create and distribute video content on Twitter in consumable bite-sized packages is now much easier than it was before. And our bet is starting to pay off. So we've seen that video views on Twitter over the course of this year have grown 250%. 90% of those views are on mobile, and we're reaching about 700 million people on the Twitter platform. And that adds up to about 370 years of video that are watched on Twitter every day. So one of the things that's really great about video on Twitter is that people come to Twitter to discover video. I think that there's really no offense here to YouTube. I think it's a great platform. But that is definitely a search and find versus a discover and delight type of experience. And so how are we empowering our TV partners to be able to take advantage of that? Well, one of the things that we've got is an acquisition that we made about a year ago is Snappy TV. This is a browser-based streaming and encoding system that allows us to pull in live TV feeds and then to be able to clip those up and distribute those out in real time. It gives you the ability to make video clips, to make vines, to make GIFs, and to make quick and easy memes. And I think that what Snappy represents in what differentiates Twitter's TV experience is that this compresses what used to be a very long time frame between being able to take a package, be able to have your video department cut it up into the right clip, send the file over, compress it, get it into the right format, and then get it out on the platform. Now you can go from live to distribute on Twitter in a matter of moments. So, it brings me to Periscope. So, one of the most interesting things that we've seen happen in the last 6 months in the Twitter media partnerships as a whole, but more specifically in the TV space, is the introduction of Periscope as a live streaming platform. And we worked really hard through March, April, and May to be able to roll this out exclusively to a lot of our partners. without the real understanding of what the reception of this would be. And I think that as we roll through the summer and into the fall of this year, the kind of adoption that we've gotten, whether that's from talent, whether that Josh Molina from Scandal sitting in his trailer every afternoon and doing a live streaming confessional, to Ellen doing some live streaming on Periscope while broadcasting. I don't know if we're going to get the sound on this one, but I think that the interesting thing here is that, she's talking about Periscope on the show while she's on the air. And so we've seen Periscope really be embraced by talent, by producers, by, we're using it behind the scenes in a lot of cases to create exclusive live streaming content behind the scenes at The Voice. We're using it to do live streams from the red carpet. It's being adopted very heavily by a lot of the entertainment news partners. And it's really starting to add up.
Today I want to talk about a new app. It's called Periscope. Have you heard of Periscope yet?
So there's the video.
Okay.
I guess it does have sound.
We used it on the show last week, so you're busted.
So I'm going to let this run for just a couple more seconds.
So you missed out, but I'll tell you what
I can
it is.
help you
Periscope
find
is
this
an
afterwards.
app that lets you stream anything you want, any time of day, to strangers all around the world. That's the good news. The bad news is it lets you live stream anything you want, any time of day, to strangers all around the world. It's actually pretty fun. People Periscope themselves eating breakfast and eating lunch and eating dinner, and I even saw, get this, someone eating brunch.
So right now, I think that it's really interesting that, as we add up all of the live streaming that's happened since March, we're looking at about 40 years of Periscope content watched every day. So this is something that we look at as just as powerful of a tool as the Vine platform, which was an acquisition from about a year and a half ago, which gave us this new proven way to get at an entirely new audience. And I think that there was somebody else up here earlier today who was talking about the fact that they never thought that they would be endeared to 6 seconds of video, but they found themselves sitting there for quite a bit of time doing so. And Vine is something that's been very attractive to us because it comes with its own built-in talent in many respects. And so what we like to do is we like to pair and partner that talent with our TV partners to be able to create great content. Some of the ways that we find that this is most effective is on award shows. But also there's a great relationship that can be made between Vine and the fan base as a whole. And I am hoping that this one will play this time and not after I talk for another minute.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
These are great pieces of that when you roll them up into an overall content experience around a television show, you've got something that now is not only very conversational, but it's very dimensional in the added media that goes into helping build and support that audience. So right now we're sitting at about 1.5 billion loops every day. And I think that Vine and Periscope have become indispensable tools for us in terms of how we add value to our TV partnerships. And so there's some other white label products that we've been rolling out that get used in red carpet events, or they get used at live events, or they get used in talent situations. And one of the ways that we used it best is that there's a product we call the Twitter Mirror, which is the ability to put an iPad in a situation where talent can walk up to it, they can easily take a picture and easily tweet it out. So we've been innovating and iterating on that and have come up with what we call Twitter Challenger. Twitter Challenger is effectively the same thing as the Twitter Mirror, but we're adding video capability to it and also prompting people who approach it to take a particular challenge, whether that's to answer a particular question or to sing a particular song or to be able to engage with it in an interesting way. And I think that the best example that we have is back from the Teen Choice Awards this summer, where the challenge was on the red carpet to do the Whip Nene. And I don't know how familiar you are with it. Some of you may know it, not know it. I'm sworn that this was not going to be the venue that I was going to do it for the first time, and I'm glad that the video is going to work. So what we did is, hopefully all of our videos will work here. There we go. So we got a variety of different responses. We licensed the music. You walked up to the mirror, you pressed the start button, and you gave your best Whip Nene. And so this was fun. This was a great way to give the audience some great content while they watched along and had that Twitter experience. But what was even better was that they took the...
For those of you who have been living under your bed,
run.
the whip and the nay-nay is the hottest dance of the summer. Oh, a little bit of that? What's going on? A little bit of that? The stars are dancing out at the Twitter Challenger on the blue carpet. Check them out and tweet with the hashtag your favorite whip and nay-nay video. Here are some of them.
Now watch me whip, now watch me nay nay. Okay. Now watch me whip, watch me nay nay. Why me do it? Now watch me whip, kill it. Watch me nay nay. Okay. Now watch me whip, watch me nay nay. Yeah, you do. Now watch me, watch me, watch me, watch me, watch me, watch me, watch me.
So we've been looking for lightweight ways that we can involve the audience in the interactions. We used some polling cards to poll the audience to be able to choose their favorite Whip Nene for that particular event. And that came right before we had just launched a new polling product, which is it's just another way that we like to be able to offer these. We offer these things to our TV partners first before they rolled out to the general consumer. So this was a great way for not necessarily to try and do true polling or trying to take an objective vote on something, but it was a great way for us to roll this out for our TV partners to ask questions of their audience based on affinity. Yeah, I think SportsCenter was a fun one. So, what does all of this mean from the create side of things? I think that we, as our TV partners, have developed a relationship with broadcasters, with producers, and with talent in a way that has given us unique access to the presentation of television. And we've been able to capitalize on that by offering a set of tools that gives the people who are involved in this process and who want to create content for TV, who want to market TV, and who want to monetize TV, the tool sets that they need to be able to do it really well. So I'm going to just spend just a few minutes on the monetized side of this. I think that there is there's still something to be said around the reach of primetime. I think that it's not something that's just exclusive to television. I think that it's just that time of the day where there's a lot of convergence around the consumption of media and the usage of Twitter that gives us the ability to really start to hone in on when some of the best times to be able to capitalize on the advertising to the TV and Twitter audience. So we do know that live tweeting is a powerful tool. We know that adding rich media video is another great way to do that, and we know that that this drives some of the drives anticipation between episodes. And so, one of the ways that one of the products that we have that we offer to our TV partners is the ability to amplify this content, which means that the content owner has the ability to be able to publish their content and then drive a pre-roll up against it. These are great, and we've seen a lot of success with these around shows where brand advertisers who are spending commercial time on TV can line up that brand sponsorship with their content on Twitter as well. We have over 200 premium advertisers globally that are part of this program that line up very well with big global brand advertisers that spend on TV as well. So there's a lot of opportunity there and a lot of synergy for those advertisers to be able to make their ad dollars work harder on television and on Twitter. So I'm not going to let this one play out because it is an ad for Pantene, but it was a great way that we were able to take some content that was done on the VMAs and slot in some pre-roll time up against those ads. So when we're having our conversations with our TV partners, we're starting to move out of the conversations that are happening specifically in the digital group and starting to move out into other parts of the organization. And those things, those conversations start to involve more and more parts of the network partners organization. So we're starting to push into marketing, we're starting to push into PR, we're starting to push into sales and digital, and the people who are responsible for the content creation. So not only are we offering our partners a way to develop a more holistic relationship to the way that their content ends up and is experienced on Twitter, but also in the way that it's monetized. So in summary, I think that there is quite a bit of this conversation today at this event that has been very focused on the changes that are happening in the marketplace around how it's distributed, how the infrastructure is going to be reshaped, how licensing and content inhibits our ability to be able to make some of the changes that I think some of us really want to see in the space. But where I think that I am most hopeful is that being a representative of Twitter, working specifically in TV, I have a ton of hope for television. I think that it's a very optimistic time, and I think that if we can start to embrace the tools that we have available to us, this can not only enhance the way that the stories are told and the way that television is experienced. I think that we can continue to move forward and make change. Thank you.
I think I'm actually going to stand. When I was on this bar stool earlier today, I had this feeling that it wasn't really designed for heavy drinkers as opposed to the rest of you. Really, first of all, thank you, Matthew, for that presentation. Really, I learned a lot of different tools that we ran through. We don't have a lot of time left, so I wanted to kind of hone in on a few higher level things. You talked very interestingly in that presentation about video on social media exploding, and I think that's a huge trend. How is that acting, though, both as a kind of disruptive experience and perhaps a complementary one for TV?
That's a great question. I think that from this disruption standpoint, I think that the tool sets that we're using now and the products that we've brought to market represent, I think, a disruptive force in the market as a whole, and that's around the commodification of the production values. And I think that a lot of the things that you saw from the digital presenters is that there's people who are taking advantage of it and who have the ability to produce beautiful looking content with very little infrastructure in their ability to be able to do that. I think from the complementary side, I think that it just adds richness in your ability to tell the story, to be able to engage with talent, to be able to engage with the creators of the show, and add another dimension to the way that you present story, or the way you present television.
Yeah, let's talk about the talent a little bit. You had some examples up there. At this point, I think in the TV industry, having talent tweeting is pretty much a given for a lot of shows. But what are some of the innovative things that you're seeing as far as getting the talent involved and working with them to build awareness, but very importantly, continue that on as the show continues to air, or maybe between seasons to keep it top of mind?
Well, one of the things that we're noticing is that it's very difficult for a TV network to exist outside of the TV network space, meaning on Twitter it's hard to be a TV network. It's even hard to be a TV show, and I think that some of the units of currency that we're seeing around TV on Twitter is around talent themselves. And I think empowering them with the tools that that we have available to us, and giving them some of the basics of training them to use the tools, giving them equipment and the things that they need to be able to make them feel comfortable, to be able to engage their audience, is like where we spend a lot of our time. I think that one of the best things that we've seen is that once talent has the tools in their hands, the creative ways that it gets used are really amazing. I think that two good examples that I've seen most recently, Fox Sports, the Fox Sports newscasters set up a little iPad and Periscope Live while they're on the air. And they've now figured it out as they can as the camera passes between the two of them, they'll write a little note on a piece of paper to describe a stat in a little bit more detail, and hold it up for the Twitter audience to see. When they go to commercial break, they'll have some conversations and they'll add some additional detail. And these are the kind of things that we would never thought we would be able to do, let alone figure out on our own. Another great example is, I think it's NBC's Undateable. They do that show live, sitcom format, done live. The star Chris D'Elia was back set at the back of the set with periscoping live, and just razzing his co-stars as they walked out onto set, and then decided in the moment that he was going to take the phone while live periscoping out onto set while they were broadcasting live. So you're starting to see these ways with which people are using this to not only engage the audience, but to be able to do really interesting and creative things with it.
Kind of meld those mediums together and a lot more sophisticated approach. In terms of being more sophisticated, let's just talk a little more specifically about certain types of content and situations. How might programmers think differently about social media, say, for a program launch during a crowded fall season, or maybe an individual show for mid-season, or summer launches? Are we beginning to find some kind of context there in terms of the time when it's launched, or that are kind of important to think about for those kind of launches?
I would say no.
No? That's interesting.
I would say no, because I think that for the audiences that we are trying to, the modern audience now, I don't think cares about fall. They don't care about mid-season. They don't care about summer. I think that it's now about sort of creating, taking the social out of social media and just looking at it as media. It's an exercise in promotion. It's an exercise in PR. It's an exercise in marketing, and it's also an exercise in continued storytelling. And every show is different, and it's just like good TV content. Good content is good content.
I guess we saw that last year with Empire as a mid-season show, and look at what that has done. Let's talk a little bit about building up kind of the talent to carry out some of these campaigns. You advise people a lot, spend a lot of time helping them, but how far along do you feel like the networks and the channels are in terms of building up in-house the expertise to really, take these tools and run? Perhaps what are some of the areas where more work needs to be done?
Well, that's interesting. I had actually come from that. I had come from Fox Broadcasting on the digital brand side, and I think that if you look at where things are now, I think that there's an increasing level of sophistication and expertise that's starting to emerge within networked organizations, and I think that they're willing now to, I think, embrace it a little bit more, and it's starting to play a more critical role. But I don't think that it's equalized across the industry. I think some people do it better than others, and some people are making bigger commitments than others.
So for those of you with expertise, there are jobs in the TV industry for you. We're actually almost up to our allotted time. I'm told we can get an extra 5 minutes. The bar isn't going to open until 5:30 anyway. So I wanted to quickly, and then I'm going to open it up to some questions from the audience. You showed a very interesting example with the detectives on with Xbox One. There's been a lot of work on second screen apps. Obviously, Twitter's been very effective there, but a lot of those apps, in terms of talking to people at Disney and CBS and some of the others, they felt like they just didn't work quite as well. Where do you see second screen, and what kind of works you see really working in the future?
Well, I think, like I said, I feel like Twitter is the second screen, is the de facto second screen app. I think that, as someone who created second screen apps for big TV shows, I think that there was a push where they thought that we could do second screen apps for absolutely everything, and then there was going to be a second screen app just for the networks. But I think that what happens is that the networks realize that they can't be a technology company, and that there's a lift when it comes to be able to develop these things, and that the audience is on the move. They're not going to dedicate themselves to one app for the long haul if it's dedicated to just one show or one network's group of shows. So I'm kind of the mindset now, I'm open to persuasion, but I think that the second screen app world right now is a little DOA.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Want to let some of you ask some questions before I go along my long list. Do we have anybody out there? Right ahead.
So I remember being pitched by some of the very early Twitter ad sales reps, and the offering was, let's say, not easy to understand at that time. I know it's come a long way. I saw a presentation recently from one of your colleagues at Streaming Media West about the Twitter ad suite of products, and it looks like it's really good. How would you describe the evolution since you've been there of the Twitter ad offering? And how much of it comes into the cool factor, the intangibles, like for instance, the emotion of the tweets, and how are you pricing those packages now?
That's a fantastic question. I don't think I'm the guy to answer that question for you, though. I think that there is a whole group of really fantastic salespeople that is their focus. I'm a partnerships guy, I'm a content guy, and I'm going to leave that one for somebody else to answer.
Next. Another one? Okay.
I just shut it down.
Well, no, I have one final question. I wanted you kind of in good Vine way, you can't escape that easily, at least until they turn my microphone off. Just a couple of takeaways from today's talk and session that people really need to be thinking about as they're thinking about using social media to get their content out into the marketplace. And you got about a minute and a half.
I would say, like the big takeaways for me today, I think that, there's a lot of fascinating things that I walked away from that are probably new to me that may not be new to you. But when it came to the question of distribution and monetization, I felt like the big thing that we did not yet address that I think is really important is that I feel like for the time being, the audience is in control. The TV industry is in state of being disrupted. I don't know how dramatic it is, but I know that all day we talked about how it's changing. Heard a lot of optimism, a lot of talk about being in the golden age of television, and not a lot of clear paths forward. And I think that that's great, and I think that we're going to continue to go through this process, but I think that if we just follow the audience and see where they're going, see what they want, and see how we can create a great experience for them, that's the clear path forward for me. The second thing is that while the audience is in control, I think that the devices are really driving the demand. I think that the proliferation of devices, the number of devices, and the way that you can get your hands on the content is what's going to really push on what people want to be able to do with those devices. And I think it was Monday morning, there was a Wall Street Journal article that just sort of graphed out like all the different services that you could potentially use to get TV content, and not one of them was able to get you like a whole series of anything. You know, I think that, you know, we all have had conversations around why that is and understand why that is, but I think that if we were ever able to push something across the table that was able to do that, I think that we would start to see some clarity in terms of how people wanted to consume.
Well, Matthew, everybody, please give him a great hand for that presentation, which really was very detailed. I learned a lot. Thank you very much.